Hey there, geeks! Adam coming at you again with another 90s comic book haul video. So soon, you say? Why? Well, this is a haul that I didn't even have to go digging through the back issue bins for. No. There are some benefits to being associated with the Retro Network, and that includes the network of awesome retro enthusiasts that are part of the VIP Lounge. That's something that you can join if you are a contributing member to the Patreon for the Retro Network. But what we have there is an awesome group of people. We kind of just share our collections, our, retro memories and thoughts, and one of those people is Brian Cave, who is a great contributor to the Retro Network, and he actually just kind of posted, said, hey, I've decided I need to get rid of my comic book collection from the 90s. It's just time to make some space. Anybody interested? And I did a little bit of this, and soon the negotiations began. All I had to do was pay shipping. It was a very generous offer, and I got some awesome comics. So, Brian, thank you so much. Excited to share all this with you now, everybody. So, first things first, we've been talking about this a lot on the podcast. It was, the big news in 1996, and that is Marvel versus DC. Yes, so I had Marvel versus DC number 4, but I did not have all of the issues. Oh, gotta flip that one around. Okay, so now we have Marvel vs. DC 2, of course, Marvel vs. DC 3, which was leading into the Amalgam combination, one of my favorite experiences in comics. And finally, there is issue number 4. I now have 2 copies, but still, to have the full run, Brian, thank you so much for those, because that was just a moment in time. I don't know that we'll ever see something on that scale again. Now, the other thing, reaching into the past on Wizards, was that we covered a little film on one of our 90s Super Cinema bonus episodes called Darkman. Yes, you might recall Michael was not a fan. And in fact, this was a full mini-series, which is very cool to see all these. There was a follow-up kind of sequel series, like the Further Adventures of Darkman in Marvel Comics form, which I already had, but I didn't have these first 3, which are more of the adaptation of the movie. So I was very excited to get that, and maybe I just sent him in the mail to Michael anonymously, and he opens them up, and he has a heart attack. I'm kidding! Anyway, but if you want to go check out that very fun discussion, well, fun for those of us that were picking on Michael, go check that out in the archives. Now, something that's very near and dear to me, I've actually covered it here as part of the Wax Pack Flashback series on the Retro Network YouTube channel, if you want to check out TRN TV. That was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. I opened up the trading cards. Here is the comic book adaptation. Yes, you can see Ivan Ooze in all his illustrated glory. But this is just, again, this was like a big deal for me, even though I was pretty old by the time this came out. I just had a nostalgia for them, and I'm excited to read that. Maybe it's better in illustrated form than the movie itself. Now, this is another series. This is kind of an anomaly, I feel like, and that was the Black Cat series. So this is really interesting because I did not read this at the time, but I just think now that I've found out that it exists, I wanted to know more. Felicia Hardy and some solo adventures, not just getting beat up by Venom in the pages of Spider-Man for the purposes of revenge. What was she up to? Especially just that art was very, very 90s. So that was cool to pick up. Last video, I talked about my haul of the Exiles comics that I got. Well, this is what if Blink had died or had not died. So this is interesting because Blink was like this character who was created, if I remember correctly, by Joe Madureira, and then she died, even though she was popular, and then they brought her back, and she had all these travels through different universes or multiverses, I believe. That's why I want to read Exiles. I want to find out. This is another Marvel and DC, Marvel and Image crossover, not DC. We already did Marvel versus DC, but this was the Silver Surfer and Weapon Zero, which again, if you'll recall in a recent video, I picked up the first issue of Weapon Zero. I had no idea this happened. There were so many Top Cow and Marvel crossovers that I've come across recently that I didn't know were a thing. So that's going to be a fun experience to see, traveling through the cosmos with the Silver Surfer and the Weapon Zero team. Also, a fun thing, it's weird how this happened. right? Like, you get an offer for, you want some free comics? I'm like, sure. And what have I been picking up lately? X-Men Adventures. So here's issues 1 and 2, because I had gotten some later issues. And now, you know, based on that hit animated series, right? Just a moment in time that we were all very excited to get our hands on. And of course, it's coming back around finally with X-Men 97. It's hard to believe. It's been, 30 odd years. So now this is another series that I have not read very much of at all, and yet I remember these issues being at my local comic book store. I know the character is a much bigger deal nowadays, and that is X-Man. Yes, issues 1 and 2, Nate Gray, right? A lot of people like what he had to offer. This kind of younger version of Bishop with the floppy hair. It's the 90s. Gotta have the floppy hair. So I am interested very much to see what all the hype and fun was about. Of course, staying in the X-Men vein, Brian, I will tell you, actually had a huge lot of X-Men books as well that I haven't had a chance to visually browse through yet, but there may be a second haul video after he shows me those, because he was big into X-Men at this time. But X-Nation 2099... so I have a near full run of all the Marvel 2099 books. I thought I had these. I looked at my log box. I did not. So this Humberto Ramos, awesome art there. So that's going to be fun to read. The only other thing I'm missing, just in case there's anybody out there that wants to offer them up in a lot or something, is the Ghost Rider 2099. I think I have the first 10 issues or so, but it carried on a little bit farther than that. And they're a little bit pricey these days, because it was kind of at the end of the 2099 run. Wasn't one of the biggest titles they had, but definitely some cool art there. Finally, sticking with the X-Men, we have the X-Men movie adaptation, which is cool. I have another version of this, so this might just be the first issue, and but I have kind of a more of a hardbound edition, so I'm interested to read through that. But also, there were some cool Wizard items that Brian had that, of course, caught my eye, right? And one of those was this comic book called Shrugged. I don't know if I've ever heard of Shrugged, but if you look here, it's actually a Wizard exclusive, okay, for Wizard World Philadelphia. So I was like, well, that's pretty cool to get that, right? And have that one of those giveaway comics, a part of Wizard history. This also was a part of that, another Shrugged preview edition, again, from Aspen Comics. I didn't know anything about this. It's kind of a flip book with this Soulfire deal. So I wasn't a huge Michael Turner fan. I covered Witchblade recently on the mini episodes, and my review was, everybody's too beautiful. I assume that's the case in all these books. But another one here that I know Wizard eventually does a half issue is for Warlands. And so I, again, have never read Warlands. It kind of looks like a different version of Battle Chasers to me, and so I'll be interested to get an idea of what that was about and why Wizard wanted to promote it, outside of, maybe some obvious reasons, right? Finally here, though, something I'm pretty familiar with is this Hellboy Premiere Edition Wizard issue, which is cool. And it actually had the certificate, upside down. It actually had the certificate of authenticity with it. So I don't know the story if Brian got that, if he ordered it, whatever it is, but I just thought that was very cool. So again, Brian Cave, thank you for contributing to the Wizards Comics Archive. Many of those will be discussed on future episodes and maybe reviewed on a mini episode in full. But hey, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube for the next video. Find us on social media at Wizards Comics on Twitter, at Wizards_Comics on Instagram. And until next time, keep your books bagged and boarded. See ya.